The 2025 NFL Combine is done. For those that made it out to Indy for the full duration, hopefully you have a chance to recover now. For those scouts that went straight to the road for pro days, keep on plowing ahead. Many questions were answered in the Hoosier State. Now the final sprint to the NFL draft begins. And with free agency about to get red hot, teams will start to give an indication of where they are going to go in April, or perhaps put out a red herring. Rumors you are hearing are most of the time made up out of almost thin air, so please be patient and vet your sources as you start to read these stories. Over on the college side, spring practices start to kick off. Teams think about roster limits down the road, and another portal season is on its way. And in all that mix, the unsung heroes, special teams coaches, get to put together their plan to win in their phases of the game. So, to talk special teams today, we are joined by Florida Atlantic University special teams coach Tyler Schovanec to talk all things football here on Scouting the League. Hey everyone, and welcome to Scouting the League. What a time in the football world. Though a game has not been played in what seems like forever already, it will be months for another real college football game or NFL game to be played. The football headlines are as active as ever. Before we talk two of those highlights from the Combine week, let me remind you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you are, whether you're listening and watching on Megaphone, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or over on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a comment, and most importantly, share this with a friend. Fans First Sports Network is our home and where you want to be. Joined as always by co-host and man that is inside the league, a guy who couldn't walk two steps in Indy without being flagged down by someone in the football world. That is Neil Stratton. He is at Inside the League on X. InsideTheLeague.com is his website, and Succeed in Football is his blog. I am Roderick David at RightStepADV on X. RSAFootball.com is my website and where you can go for all things scouting, and Scouts, where you can go to find scouting community. Head there now, get signed up. Let's give Scouts all the data, resources, and information you need. Neil, among those football world highlights from Indy were the two Inside the League events this year, the Ellis and Kibler at Merrill Lynch ITL Combine Seminar presented by Skill Corner, as well as the Vestibule ITL Symposium presented by Mascot Alliance. Both were outstanding events, outstanding participation, outstanding to honor the scouts from across the NFL. Had to have been happy with the way both of those events ended up.
Yeah, it was really exciting. We had, I told people to expect 150 to 200 scouts for Wednesday night for the seminar, and I think we had about 300. We had seats for 140. I would say we had probably 40 or 50 standing, and then I think there were about 50 outside kind of trying to peer over the crowd, and that includes one NFL GM, I'm told. So, yeah, we're probably going to need to go to two rooms next year. It was really exciting. It was, obviously we had a whole host of awards. The one I think where we are now, what's the highlight of the night, I guess, is the Cio Brocato Award, and that goes to, as you know, Roderick, someone who's been out there driving the roads and helping kids and identifying talent for years and years, and is not a household name. And this year it went to Chuck Cook, and that was really exciting. I think Chuck was touched. We had a pretty cool video that we played that gave a number of testimonials, people telling stories about Chuck and what have you. And then he got a standing ovation when we were done. And so that was really neat. And he's the sixth winner. We've had every single one of them has been great, but it seems like it builds on it a little every year. And so, we're looking forward to next year on that. And I think I'm going to start soliciting input from the previous winners now that we have a few on who it should go to. And I think it's going to be bigger and better next year. But, yeah, a number of awards, and was really humbled by the response One thing, we have the hour before we get started, we reserve for pictures, and we had a photographer there. And normally we're kind of wait. It's last minute because we try to start at 5:30 sharp because we know there are interviews afterwards with players, et cetera, et cetera. Usually we're scrambling and getting those last ones done. We were done with pictures basically at 10 after today, which I'm sorry, last week, which I took as a measure of how we're kind of gaining traction and more people are making time for this. And, the special teams workout went from 1 to 6. So there are a lot of guys that had to pull away from that to come and join us in the convention center. So real exciting night, a lot of fun, a lot of winners, all of them earned. And just, again, I don't have a vote on this. I just count the votes. So it's not like I'm going out there and saying this guy, this guy, and this guy. These are votes from active scouts. These are from their peers, and I think that's why each one of these winners should be real excited to have achieved this honor. So a great night, and of course
Yeah.
it was special as well. Very different format. We had 11 panelists. Our first panel was 6, and then our second was 5 of college GMs, all of them from Power 4 football, and asked some really tough questions, got some really good answers. But that, they were a bit of a challenge, but these are the answers that everyone needed. I think we wound up with 34 P4, 34 schools, 27 of them P4. I think we had 17 GMs there, and we had representatives from 25 of the top NIL agencies out there. So if you missed it, we sure hope you can make it next year. We've got some video out there. I think everyone's kind of seen on our social media page, and we'll continue to put more out there. This week is going to be kind of me working with social media and making sure that the people that won the awards get the recognition they deserve, making sure people know about them, making sure that they're doing a great job out there. And that's on me to kind of get that done. And I'll be working pretty hard on that over the next 48 hours. And hopefully we'll have something out there on X or Twitter or whatever you prefer on the ITL account. And we'll be able to kind of spread the word a bit more about just who the winners were and they're the honors that they deserve.
Yeah, no question. Both events continuing to grow. Neil Stratton inside the league, only getting stronger every year. Despite what Neil would tell you, again, he is not going anywhere. He is kicking as strong as ever. Again, outstanding events. And again, it's always good when you're talking to scouts and, later on unsolicited. That was just fantastic. It's, an honor for me to just be connected with Neil doing these events. Cause again, they assume I'm more connected to him than I actually am. Neil does all the work. Neil and his team, it's fantastic. So really good events. Now recovery time for everybody that spent for a lot of people over a week in Indianapolis, whether you're going straight out to pro days or, maybe they can just sit back and listen to the rest of the podcast here today with Coach Schovanec and, learn a little bit about special teams. So, Neil, it was great. And let me say from everybody out there, good work and congrats on unbelievable events.
Well, I appreciate it, but I'm also excited about the scouting community. That was one thing that we were able to shine a little bit of light on. You were part of that event on Wednesday night. And, for those who are listening today but weren't able to join us, it's a great venture that I am going to be proud to assist Roderick with. And I'm hoping that we can continue to make conditions better for the scouts that are out there, help them do their jobs better, know a little bit more about how they can support their families and the money they're making and all those kinds of things, and just build on what we've done in the past. So I really applaud that venture as well, Roderick, and I'm excited to see how that's going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to get it fully off the ground. It seems like every time I think I'm breaking the finish line to actually get it rolled out, I run into a brick wall somehow, and I think that's just the nature of, I don't know, technology or business. But scouts, be looking for emails, be looking for more texts. Again, we are ready for you to sign up if I can get that final little hump on the website overcome. But again, let me know. We'll look forward to it, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, it will be exciting. If I could just run through the winners, since while we've got a minute here. On the scouting side, we gave awards to 3 different pro departments. The winners of those awards were Green Bay, Minnesota, and Washington, all represented by, I think 2 of them were represented by their pro directors, and one, I think Washington, was represented by Doug Williams, was really exciting for me to meet Doug, given that I'm a Louisiana boy and he had just accomplished so much at Grambling. So that was fun. As far as the BART list itself, in the next wave category, which is for the younger scouts, kind of the up and comers, the winners were Blaze Bell with the Giants, Tom Bradway with the Bears, and Eric Thatcher with the 49ers. If you look at the road category, which is the bulk of scouts, these are the area slash college guys and the national guys. The winners were Mike Ball with the Saints, Brian Chesson with the Broncos, Marcus Cooper with the Giants, Mike DeReese with the Giants, Ryan Florence with the Seahawks, Dom Green with the Jets, Sawan Joe with the Broncos, Chase Leshin of the Dolphins, Steve Rubio with the 49ers, Nate Trott with the Dolphins, and Dan Zaggers with the Browns. And then in the executive category, we had Tariq Ahmad from the 49ers, Matt Berry with the Seahawks, Dom Masico with the 49ers, Ed Dodds of the Colts, Brian Game with the Bills, Ted Monago with the Rams, John Eric Sullivan of the Packers, Matt Turpning with the Colts, and Matt Winston of the Dolphins. Best on a visit went to Nate Trott. Best running a pro day, Sawan Joe. And best at gathering character information was Nate. Again, he really cleaned up out there. Strength coach of the year was Torrey Beckton of Texas. He couldn't join us, but we had a video presentation from Torrey. Pro liaisons of the year were Cody Luck of Oregon, who did join us, and Jay Kaiser of Illinois, who couldn't join us because he just took the assistant to the head coach job with the Jags. So we're real excited about him. Jay has been the co-winner of the award the first 2 years we've given it out, so he cleared the way. He won't be returning as winner because he's in the league now. We're real excited about that. And then finally, most improved visit went to Boise State, and that's they were pretty much runaway winners. It's the kind of award you don't have to win. You don't want to win 2 years in a row. But we're excited about the direction they're going. Brandon Jones picked up that award, came all the way from Boise to do that, and we were really honored by that. So it was a great night. We had a lot of people traveling a long ways to come in and be part of it, and we hope that continues as we go forward. It's something that we are honored by their presence and just happy that they thought enough to want to come. And I think by merely being there, it's an endorsement of how they feel about scouts and what an important part of football scouting is. And that's what this whole night, what Wednesday night is always about. So a lot of excitement there, a lot of fun. And I hope that it continues to gain traction so that the people, the evaluators out there who are working hard, doing their jobs, can get a little bit of acclaim. They certainly deserve it.
Yeah, and that best draft award again, that may be the most coveted one. A front office that has kind of changed the way some teams view not only the combine but all-star games and a lot of the off-season work in the Los Angeles Rams. A big contingent that a lot of them came out just for to be the award. Les Snead, GM, did a really cool video. Again, really gave big props to his scouts and the people that not only with his team but across the scouting world that do really good work. So you finally get a couple first round picks, and they absolutely nailed them. So that best draft award to Les Snead and those Los Angeles Rams, who again had several award winners in here and do a really good job in a very unique way. You're continuing to make everyone think about what is the best practice and not just what this is the way it's always been done.
That's right. Well, the winners change a little bit every year, and Teddy Monago was a return winner. But Chance Trickett has won in the past. Brian Hill's run in the past. They've got a number of great evaluators there. And hats off to Taylor Morton, who I was like, Taylor, man, I know you guys aren't really in Indianapolis. Could you scramble some people up so we can at least take a picture with more than maybe just a couple of people? And I think Taylor also wanted to make sure that Michael Pierce got a lot of acclaim because he was kind of the point of the spear when it came to their top two picks, and I think maybe even their fourth rounder. I'm not sure, but they really wanted to give him some recognition because they're really happy with the job that he did. They've got a great scouting core there in Los Angeles, and I think that's probably obviously the backbone of their evaluation. And I think Les would agree, kind of the secret sauce for them. They've done a great job. Of course, we saw a key member of their staff get the GM job in Jacksonville as well. So they're getting their flowers for the job they've been doing, in addition to the fact that they're a perennial playoff team and won a Super Bowl not too long ago. So great job for the Rams. Hats off to those guys. Really excited for the job they did. We'll see if they can be the first ever repeat winners in the best draft award. I guess we'll know in about a year.
Well, let's get to Coach Schovanec, a young man that has continued to plug away at his career in coaching. I can call him a young man because I was actually a coach for Tyler for 1 year at Case Western Reserve University. Tyler is a former Carroll University quarterback as well as Case Western quarterback and eventual coach. Red Raider special teams QC, now special teams coordinator at FAU. He's got another stop or two in there along the way, but a story better told by him. Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here talking with you guys.
It's been a minute since we've been on. We've texted back and forth over the years as you've continued your journey. Again, I remember going back, and I think at one point you contemplated scouting, contemplated getting into personnel side of it, but obviously You've gone coaching. But don't let me tell it. Talk about your origin story, growing up, football, how you got into it, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Lubbock, Texas. And so, my parents actually both work at Texas Tech. So I've been around universities my whole life. I've been, I went to all the tech games growing up, and so that's really always appealed to me. I was a much better student than I was athlete. So as I went through high school in the recruiting process, I realized that my options would be at the Division III level, which I was fired up. I just wanted to play. And so at the end of the day, I went to Carroll in Wisconsin, which is a long way from Lubbock. But the reality was I wanted to play, and I also played baseball. So I wanted to go somewhere where they would let me play two sports. And so I did that. And then, like I mentioned, I was a much better student. So I graduated in 3 years, and I was lucky enough to get on at Case with you guys. And that was an awesome experience. And so I learned a lot there. And, I got my master's degree at Case. So I was a grad transfer before that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a Division III grad transfer. And that was totally for academics.
More rare.
And that was totally for academics because I got an academic scholarship there. And so I did that. And, what really came down to, I was in finance. Was I going to go into finance? I had an internship. I really didn't like it. It wasn't for me. And then Coach Debs asked me to stay on as a GA, more or less. It was restricted earnings, my first opportunity. And that's really where I learned the most. In the summers, I would go back home to Lubbock and I would volunteer because I knew that coaching was something I always considered. And so I'd go back home and basically do whatever they asked me to do at Tech. Like I mentioned, my parents worked there, so that was kind of my in. And so I just volunteer, and that was great. But really working for Coach Debs and you guys, that was what really got me into this business. And so, at that time, I wasn't sure I didn't know much about it in terms of is scouting the right place, is coaching the right place. Once I started coaching, I realized that really was what I wanted to do. I love being a part of a team. I like the X's and O's part of it. I like the techniques and all that kind of stuff. And so coaching was what really did it for me. And so I was lucky from there to get back on at Texas Tech because I had volunteered basically every summer. In Division III, you don't stay up there in the summer unless you're from the area. Mm-hmm. You go back home and you work a job or do whatever, and you train on your own. And so I got back on at Texas Tech, and I've been lucky. Basically, if you could summarize my career, it's that I've been lucky and I've been around the right people and just had the right timing and just been prepared when the timing came. But basically, I went back to Texas Tech. And the reason they hired me is because I could work a computer. And so that's the truth. And so, I volunteered. They knew I worked hard, but I worked for a legendary special teams coach. He's now retired, but Joe Robinson. So anyway, but he was old school as old school gets. Computer was not his forte. That was my forte. And so I really cut my teeth. And the reason they hired me, he was a special teams guy, and I was not. I knew nothing about special teams is the reality. But he taught me, and, he needed someone that could run a computer, and that's what I could do. And so that was kind of the deal there. But I did that for a year and learned a ton, and worked for Coach Kingsbury, and that was awesome. So I saw how he operated. There were a bunch of good coaches on that staff, one of whom is Zach Kitley. And so basically, I met him there at Tech. He was a GA, but more or less coaching the quarterbacks in a lot of ways because Coach Kingsbury was the head coach. And so, he was really hands-on with the quarterbacks. And so basically after that year, he got the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator at Houston, what's called Houston Baptist. Now it's Houston Christian. And so when he got that opportunity, I was fortunate that he hired me to be his running backs coach as well as a special teams coordinator. So I interviewed there at the head coach, and I did that. And they really hired me because of special teams at that point. So I had learned enough where I felt confident that I could do it. But once again, the best way to learn is by doing. And so going into that and doing it, I learned a ton. And I was there for 4 seasons, and we had some success. It was a startup FCS program, that's a different animal. And we had some success. Coach Keatley had a lot of success. We had a Bailey Zapp, and we had a number of players there that, in fact, actually played in the NFL. Caleb Johnson, Jared Stearns was in the CFL. So we had some guys that did well, and especially Bailey. And so Coach Keatley's career has really taken off, and it's so well deserved because he's as real as it gets. He goes to Western Kentucky, did great. And then he got back on at Tech, and he's really the one that introduced me because I didn't know Coach McGuire. And there's a special teams coach there with Kenny Perry, who in the Texas area is really well known. He's getting inducted into the Arlington Hall of Fame. He's a big deal. And so anyway, Coach Keatley introduced me to those coaches back at Tech. I got on there for 3 more years, and then Coach Keatley got this opportunity to be the head coach. And so I've really rid his coattails. But you know what? I've been lucky, and just try to do a good job with whatever is entrusted to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's you hit on a bunch of restricted earnings coach. I mean, that is a really good way of saying they pay you absolutely nothing to do a lot of different things. And again, that is for anybody in the football world, that is usually the way you get your start. You are going to eat a lot of ramen noodles. And I remember even as a GA, if you have a Friday recruiting event, you're taking that sheet pan of whatever leftovers are left home and eating on it for at least a couple of days. And I mean, that is the way you, like you said, cut your teeth, but also you're lucky. And that is one way of saying I was prepared for when the opportunity came. You met a bunch of good people. You were doing really good work. And it is the maybe hardest pill to swallow for guys that are high motivators in this industry is you can do a lot of work. You can be really good at what you're doing. If the cards don't line up, you can just keep doing that for a long time. And for some people, the cards never line up. For some people, it seems like they just keep falling into place. And again, then it's on you to keep taking advantage of every opportunity. You have certainly done that. And again, some outstanding champions, some outstanding mentors. Is there somebody, obviously you hit on a couple of them, is there one person that was really your go-to, your guy that, again, you're picking up the phone and calling any chance you have a question?
Well, outside of Coach Keatley, that's really the one that I would say is my mentor, that has helped me to get where I'm here today. The other one is the guy I just worked for at Texas Tech, Kenny Perry. He's a veteran guy. He was a high school head coach. He's worked at a bunch of stops. And, he was also, he was in my wedding. He spoke at my wedding. He's someone that I trust. And, if you meet Kenny, you meet Coach Perry, he is one, he's hilarious. He's the funniest coach I've ever been around. But he has just a way of interacting with people. And, that's what I took the most at Texas Tech. Of course, he was great with scheme. Of course, he was great with technique. But the way that he inspired the players, the way that he inspired the coaches, that was what was special. That's what makes him such a good – because there's a lot of coaches that know stuff. But his ability to interact with people was special. So he's really the one, if I could just shout out one person. There's so many others. If you talk about going back to Houston Baptist, when we were a bunch of young coaches – the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, Ben Arbuckle, that was his time when he was not only restricted earnings, he was a volunteer. And so he made such a dramatic come up, and it's so well deserved. And then we had an offensive line coach who's now the offensive line coach at Wake Forest. And there are a lot of coaches that were on that staff, but guys that came in, they were young, and, we've kind of come up together in different ways. And, they're even more successful than me in some ways. And you know what? So I'm lucky that I have those guys that I can call and get advice from. But just one guy to really be Kenny, because Coach Perry is he's a great coach, and it's really his people skills and the way he interacts with you it's just really special.
Yeah,
Tyler, when I think of special teams coaches, I don't normally think of ex-quarterbacks. That's not where you go to groom your special teams guys. How long when you first were approached to be a teams coach, was that something you kind of maybe had pause before you kind of bought into that? And How long did it take you to really feel like, yeah, I'm a special teams coach now?
No, it was, I knew what I had to do, whatever I could to get in. And, at that time, Coach Debs, I really leaned on him. I asked him for a lot of advice. I asked Roger for a lot of advice. And so when I got the job at Tech, it wouldn't have mattered. They could have offered anything, and I would have taken it. And, I went there, and Coach Robinson was the guy I worked for at that time. And he retired shortly after. He'd been like a couple of times special teams coach of the year. And when I got into special teams, I really liked it. I think it fits my personality. I'm kind of analytical. I have a finance background. I kind of organized, a little bit OCD almost to a fault. And so it fits me. And, I like working with the entire team. I like the fact that every play is such high stakes. It's not like we get a second chance. Let's do that punt again. It's like a high stakes deal. It kind of gets me going. And, I like that special teams is a little bit, I think, almost unique compared to offense and defense, where so much of it is a special game plan. There's so many different things that are involved, and the intrinsicies of that, I love it. So I'd say I bought into it right away. I would have done anything. I would have bought into anything right away. But you know what? I think it was kind of meant to be that I got into special teams.
Yeah. Again, you talk about that fit as you, again, in any role as a scout, as a coach, you find your fit and you just take it and run. And again, sometimes you get lucky and fall into the right one right away. Sometimes you have to search for it a few years. You hit on something again, your ability, your desire, your enjoyment of getting to work with everybody on the team. Again, special teams, you got to have a kicker, got to have a punter, got to have a long snapper. Hopefully you have a good return specialist. But at the end of the day, that special teams group is going to be somebody from offense, defense, all 9 position groups. Again, you're probably going to have some offensive linemen, defensive line in your shield. Mm-hmm. You're going to be touching every element of that roster. And it's often forgotten how integral that entire roster is. Your core 4 guys, but everybody's going to be involved in some way. Talk about special teams, and as you're putting your roster together, as FAU is putting their roster together now, thinking about the future, how are you guys discussing special teams and the role it plays as you think about, again, roster limits or portal, mm-hmm. and again, just building that roster that's going to help you win games?
Well, it's changing. Right now it's changing. So, we're going to the 105, and so that's what we're basing everything off, is the 105. So more or less what we're doing here is 50 offense, 50 defense, 5 specialists. So when, for me, those 5 spots, it's critical that I get those right. And I'm basically getting, 2 snappers, and I get 3 kickers, punters, however it shakes out. It could be a kicker, a punter, and a combo. So that's really what I'm doing in my room. And then, on offense and defense, where I come into play is the walk-ons. If they can't help me in some capacity, then we'll probably go a different direction with that walk-on spot. And then, kind of the bottom guys in terms of, I say bottom guys, I'm saying the guys that are on the fringe, and it's between 2 players who has more special teams value. So they're not bottom guys, but in terms of the deciding factor is the special teams value. So it's going a lot more towards NFL. And, in the past when there was 120, you could take a guy knowing that he did not have the highest motor for special teams, but he had this X factor on offense and defense, and he was going to do that. And even if he was a developmental player, that you could still take that kid. Nowadays, not so much. It's a lot. I'm sure, I'm not as familiar with the NFL as you guys are, but I'm sure it's a lot like the draft, later rounds, free agents, priority guys. If they can't help me, then they really probably don't have a spot. So college is going a lot more towards what I think is the NFL model. Maybe you guys can tell me if that's what you guys think you're seeing from your end.
Yeah, no. Again, when you have a roster limit, again, it's absolutely factored in as opposed to just loading up everybody on the bus who wants to put your jersey on. And again, whether they have value 5 years from now or not, again, you certainly have to take that into consideration. Tyler, one of the ways that it used to be that scouts would look at special teams to try to get an idea like, hey, these are going to be the dudes for next year. Again, you think about your P4, your good G5 schools. It's like, wow, this guy was, he had 7 tackles on special teams this year. The senior linebacker graduated. He's going to the draft. Nowadays, though, again, that player, he probably jumped into the transfer portal. He is going somewhere where he can start. He can get a look at it now. So the transfer portal has obviously not just for offense, defense depth, but special teams starters in depth has played a factor. How have you had to adjust in your time at Tech and now going over to FAU? How have you had to adjust the way either you're working to keep those guys, working to get those guys on the field, and kind of keep some cohesiveness in the way those units are made up?
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Everyone has their own challenges and philosophy when it comes to the portal. I will tell you, so it's unique. At Texas Tech, a little bit different, especially now at Tech, because they have a couple of guys in particular that have really stepped up and given them some financial backing in terms of their collectives. And so, their philosophy is going to be totally different than our philosophy. Of course, you want to try to do the best you can. The one thing I'll say, I can only really speak for here and in a limited capacity. The one thing I think we're doing the right way is we're doing it by the books. And so, the people that are involved in those conversations with the kids is only the head coach and, the chief of staff. And so everything is by the books. I'm not even really involved in those, which takes a lot off my plate. But the good thing about that is, if you're promised a certain amount financially to stay here, you'll get that amount. And so I think we're doing that part right. But when it comes to guys, in terms of like you mentioned, a guy may play well on special teams. We had a guy that when we got to the staff, he was a great gunner. And then, when we got here, he as a freshman produced so much on special teams. He got in the portal. He ended up going to a Power 5 school because they saw that obviously he'd end up being a great defensive back also, but he had immediate value on special teams and he had a lot of years left. The same thing can happen with, there's a kid that we took named Tyler Stolsky from Minnesota, a core 4 guy, a little bit older, was not in the mix as much on defense, and he wanted to get more defense. So, we took him with the fact that, he's going to be one of the guys that really going to lean on a linebacker. So it goes both ways, and I think part of it depends on how many years they have left. But, of course, the value that they have on special teams is a huge factor in that. And even if a guy, I think to get in the portal now, you have to have tape. But if it's special teams tape, that's not a bad thing. You can evaluate quite a bit off of that. Mm-hmm. And so that's really valuable. And if he's a young guy, then maybe he goes up because he can project more on offense and defense. If he's an older guy and he's been playing only special teams and he wants to play offense or defense, then maybe he finds a different fit. But I think for those kids, they can find whatever's best for them based on their situation.
Tyler, I'm not as familiar with kickers and punters and long snappers as I should be when it comes to how they're scholarshiped, how they fit in the roster, all those kind of things. How do y'all commit your resources? I mean, are your starters on scholarship? Do you ever look to the portal to find punters, kickers, long snappers? I mean, I would presume that you don't, but I don't know. Or is it more of a high school thing? I mean, how do you populate your roster when it comes to those guys and make decisions?
Yeah, for me personally, my philosophy in terms of coming to the portal is if I have an immediate need, I'm going to use the portal. And so it's so hard, especially I think to find punters. Punters is incredibly hard to be 18 years old and to start at the college level. There's so much that goes into punting. And, that's why you see so many of the guys coming over from Pro Kick in Australia. They're a lot older. Mm-hmm. They have a lot more experience. They've maybe played professional rules, Australian football, which I think that's great what they're doing. When I go into the portal, I'm looking for experience. Like I talked about a second ago, I'm looking for a guy that is at an FCS school and he's done well and he wants to go up a level, Division II, whatever it may be. I don't care. Or he's maybe at a Power 5 school and they haven't given him a scholarship and he wants a scholarship. And so, we do scholarship 3, a kicker, a punter, and a snapper. And, that comes really from Coach Kitley, and he believes special teams is important. And I really do think that you're going to be lost if you don't have good specialists. If you say special teams is important, you have to have good specialists. And so I think it's common. A lot of teams will have 3 guys on scholarship. That's not just us. Most schools will have 3. And then, nowadays with the 105, schools actually might have more depending on where they're at, or they'll have guys that are getting money through a collective or something, which is basically a scholarship. But for us, we have 3. And I do want to use the high school. I think it's important to go through high school for a developmental guy. That's really the 4th or the 5th guy in my room is someone I'd much rather, redshirt. He understands what we're doing culture-wise, and then put him on scholarship. I think that's a better way of doing it. It doesn't always work out that way. And the good thing about the portal is, for those players, they're able to find something that they're looking for, whether it's a higher level, money, whatever it may be. And for us, we can solve an immediate need without having to speculate. Like I know if a player's in the portal and he was an all conference FCS, I know what he's capable of doing. And so there is some security, just kind of like free agency. I'd imagine in the NFL, you can tell what a player can do. That's the value to me in the portal is I know what I'm getting, and it takes a lot of the risk out of it, which I can't miss with 5 spots.
Yeah, certainly. You've been at a couple different levels. FAU really just getting rolling there. Houston Baptist, obviously Texas Tech. Let's take the money factor because obviously, again, your P4 is always going to have the deepest pockets, almost always going to have
Yeah.
the deepest pockets. If you take the money out of it, what are some of the biggest differences you see in the different levels you've been at is in terms of the special teams roster building and making sure you have the best 11 for each of your units?
Yeah, well, one thing I do think is important about the portal, and I learned this from Coach McGuire, who's another coach that I really, when he was at Texas Tech, working for him, he always said that if players feel like they're being developed and that you care about them and they're having fun, they actually don't really want to leave, even if they have an opportunity to go in the portal for more money or whatever it may be, because people don't like change; they like the comfort of being where they're at. And so I think no matter where you're at, if kids feel like they're getting better and they enjoy being there, they really don't want to leave. For us here, we've got a great opportunity that, we're a mile and a half from the beach. From the top of our site, you can see the beach, you can see the ocean. So, I think we can keep a lot of players here. And there are a lot of players that we can get here that, maybe another group of 5 school could not get because the quality of life is unbelievable. I love it here. I want to be here as long as I possibly can. And so I think that gives us some advantages. And then, for me, I'm lucky because the head coach said we're going to play our best players. Now, to how much, I kind of break it down into 4 categories. Whether a guy's a key player on offense and defense, like he's a key starter, they're really maybe not as a rotation. He's the only guy getting reps. Obviously, I'm going to use that guy at a very minimal amount on special teams. Somewhere between 0 to 5 snaps a game. And it's really a key play. Like this is the punt in the 4th quarter where we have to get it off, we have to cover. And so this guy's been getting reps on the 2 deep, and he's got to go this time. So that's what I determine as a key starter. A starter is somebody who's in a rotation, but he's taking the majority of the snaps. He's gonna start on one phase for me, and so it could be the best receiver, outside guy he's long, he plays well in space, he's physical. He'll play on kickoff return or punt return, but he'll start on that. That'll be the only phase he does. He could be in the 2 deep on something else, especially if we're going on the road traveling because there's restrictions on our travel roster. But he'll just do one thing. So he's probably playing between 5 to 10 snaps a game. Backup guys, that's the backup linebacker. I'm going to use him a bunch. And so a good player on special teams is going to get over 15 core snaps. I'm just talking about punt, kickoff, punt return, kick return, not talking about field goal block. So in core snaps over 15, and then you start the last phase is really the walk-on guys, the guys that get to go on the bus because they're playing for me, but they have no shot of going on offense and defense. So those guys, in order to get that, have to be able to play, I would say, 5 to 10 snaps. So on multiple phases, they're starting. And so, they have an opportunity to actually contribute to the game. So that's kind of how I look at the roster and breaking it down to, how I use each kind of guy.
Okay, so Tyler, when I think of a special teams coach, I think of a guy who's out there. He's teaching punt block. He's teaching punt save.
Yeah.
He's teaching all those kinds of things, and that's a critical part of it. But also part of the job is making sure the punter's doing what he's supposed to do,
Yeah.
and the kicker, all those kind of things. You don't come from a special teams background per se. You weren't a kicker. You weren't a punter. Do you feel confident about teaching those guys when they need some tweaks?
Yeah.
Or do you have people that you are on staff that kind of help you with that?
The way I would describe myself when it comes to specialists, I do work with those guys all day. I'm lucky, and I think you're going to see more of this because the rule passed that there is no coaching limit. You can have more than 10 guys on staff that can actually coach. So more and more staffs are adding a dedicated special teams guy. That's all he does is just special teams. And so for me, when the special teams period is over, I'm going with the specialist and we're going to work on stuff. And so, you have that in the NFL. Now it's becoming more commonplace in college. And I think there is a place to also have guys that have kicking experience. That helps. I don't. And so the way I'd refer to myself is I'm like a good caddy, right? And so a lot of caddies, they couldn't play on the tour. I couldn't kick or punt. But there are certain things that I've picked up, and the best way I think that I can help guys is I've been around really successful guys. At Tech we had the Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Year, Austin McNamara. We had an all-conference kicker every single year, and so you learn seeing what those guys do, what makes them successful, and then I also try to do a good job of going out and always learning something from the professionals in the kicking industry. Like I did a whole thing with John Carney, who's in the West Coast, but he's from here. There's other guys. And so, I make sure that I have enough knowledge base where I'm not saying the wrong things, but I also don't say too much where I'm going to screw those guys up. That's a big deal. But I think just making sure they're prepared and giving them structure, that's what the value that I have. And I've been around some good ones, and I think I have a method that works. And there's certainly a balance with specialists. There's a balance. If you get over technical or, you can mess guys up. And their swing is their swing. When they get to this level, their swing is their swing. And so you have to respect that. And you just have to make sure they're prepared, make sure they have an opportunity to do every situation in practice, and don't overkick them. And so that's what I do. That's really my philosophy when it comes to specialists. And it's worked, I think.
What about when it comes to kickers? I think at least maybe a quarter, maybe a half of their success is based on mental.
No
To
doubt.
me, yeah. I mean, do you feel like how do you how do you perform as a psychologist when kickers they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? Their stroke seems good, but
Yeah.
it's not going in, and it starts to compound on it. I mean, I presume you have tips and tricks on how you deal with that
Yeah.
as well.
Well, one is we use our team psychologist. So I stay in my lane. That's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stay in my lane. And so we're lucky we have that. I've had that at Tech, and I think most schools have that. You have to use that. And so those people they're professionals, they're experts, and so you have to use that. They can give them strategies that I just don't know. But for me, my job is to make sure they're prepared. And I think that you get a certain level of confidence by being prepared. And so we have a schedule that every week we follow. Some of it is just visualization. On Friday, we don't even kick. But after we do our special teams, we go out in the field. There's just a ball. I place it down. We go through every situation, whether that's going to be we've got to hurry up and kick a field goal, Mayday. We're going to get iced. We have one timeout. I'll say it's end of game, whatever. This is the situation, and they go through it, and they know exactly what they're going to expect. Like we get iced, we're going to snap the ball in the whistle. We're going to get a free kick so we can gauge the wind. And so they know when we get in that situation, which it happened a lot for us at Tech. In fact, we beat Oklahoma and Texas in the same season on a game-winning field goal in the exact same deal. And so there's confidence in being prepared. That's what I can give them. Certainly there's other resources. And then part of it is, I learned this from Coach Barry. He puts a lot of pressure on those guys. And sometimes, just the way that he'll try to play mind games with them. And so, you can do that. You can just put pressure on them in practice. All of a sudden we're in a break. We'll say Mayday. We got to run out there and make a field goal. They're not expecting it. And so I think you're putting those guys in those situations in practice is really what our job is. And I try to do a good job of that. And then, also I think just being positive and lifting them up. And, also I think scripting for success. Maybe the first time you're doing that drill, it's a short field goal. So their likelihood of making it is good. And I think that's important is building on success. So that's really what I try to do is just, make sure that they're prepared.
Yeah.
How much time, last thing, Tyler, the elements I think have more of an impact on teams than on offense or defense.
Yeah.
How much time do you spend on wet balls or maybe, anything like that? Or do you even spend time on that?
Yeah, I try to use whatever we have. So in Lubbock, anytime we'd go out there, it didn't matter what the weather was. If the rest of the team was going in the indoor, we were going outside. And so you said you've been in Lubbock for a little bit, so you know what it's like.
Absolutely.
So there's like the haboobs.
Absolutely.
The haboobs is when it's so windy, the sky is red, it looks like you're on Mars. It would not matter it does not matter anytime we have an opportunity to go outside, we were going to go outside and kick. So being in a place like that, you have an opportunity to work in any kind of situation. And, whenever we go outside, the first thing we're doing is we're going into the wind. And so, we just take advantage of the fact that we can do that. Here in Florida, it's a little bit windy. We're right on the ocean. But the thing that we have is we practice in the morning. It's wet. Every morning it's wet. There's dew. It's wet. So we naturally get wet ball stuff every single day. So I think just exposing them to that and, that's certainly a big deal. But we just try to take advantage of whatever we can do and get. And the one thing for us is we're going to go outside, no matter what the team's in the indoor, whatever it is. We're going to go outside. We can't afford to miss out on having an opportunity to be out there in the elements because that's what we're going to play in. And so try to expose them to every single condition they can get. And hopefully they're ready to go whenever that happens in the game.
And one element that you haven't discussed so far is holders.
Mm-hmm.
What's your philosophy there? Do y'all use the punter?
Yeah.
Do you use a quarterback? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah,
And why?
the punter to me is the best because a punter should have good hands. The number one thing I think that most people look for in a punter, besides their leg talent, is their hands. Because if they have bad hands, their leg talent can never match up because they can never get the drop right. They have to be able to field the snap. So punter should have good hands. Ours does. He has experience holding. I expect he'll be the holder. But I also always try to get a lot of depth. And the one thing I really think is important is you have to have multiple operation units, and you got to mix them at random. So the first kicker kicking with the second holder, the second snapper mixing in there. And so when it's, an injury will happen or something will happen that you're ready to go. For me, whenever it comes to holders, if let's say I have a punter that can hold, the second guy is somebody on the team. For us, we have a walk-on receiver who's held before previously in high school, and then a quarterback, a backup quarterback, is also a good option because how smart they are. You can do gate plays, you can put them in there, and they also have good hands because they handle the snap every single play. So those positions make the most sense. The reason that most teams use a punter and that we use a punter is they're with the guys all day. So when we're doing individual, we can incorporate drills in. Those other guys have other drills we're doing, so we just steal time with them before, after practice. But I try to use the punter as much as I can because that's half of his job is holding in my mind.
Okay, now here's this is a soapbox issue for me, all right? Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
I'm an old man, okay? When I was a kid, punters punted for the coffin corner, okay? And that is a great play. I don't care what anybody says. There's no return, okay? And if you nail it, man, you can pin them deep.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, why doesn't anyone use coffin corner punting?
I think we try to. We certainly do. So one thing we do, how much you want to get in the weeds on special teams, is we do offset. So, in college, there's so much more flexibility, which is one thing I like about the college game. In pro, you're dictated what you can really do on punt by the rules. In college, there's a lot more that you can do. And so we're a shield team. We can offset. That I think helps us do more directional because we're already cheating towards a direction by snapping at an angle. And so we snap at an angle, so he's closer to the sideline. So we can, I think, have a better chance of coffin cornering because the angle is not so hard. Why more teams don't do it. I think there has been a little bit of a drop-off in the quality of some American punters, or maybe not drop-off, but it's hard to punt. It's really hard to punt. And the high-end guys are getting so good. But there's also a bunch of talent coming in from Australia, a bunch of different places. Punting is really hard. It's hard to find a high school player that can do that. And a lot of them are primarily kickers that punt, and it's totally different. But I think the main thing is you out of bounds at 30 yards. That's worse, than hitting the ball, 45 in the field of play and they get a 5-yard return. That the one that shanks out of bounds, it kills you on punt. So that's probably why, because guys are afraid if your drop's a little bit inside or whatever, and then you hit it out of bounds, that's a bad deal if you shank it out. So that's probably the thing, guys, in their mind. And it's just a slight miss. And if you're aiming really close to the sideline and you get a shank, that's not a good deal.
Yeah, it's always fun watching some of these international guys come, what they can do with a football and their foot. The guys that are really good, man, they're really good, and it's fun to watch, and it gives you some options. Obviously, the NFL game's a little bit more restrictive. Let's talk about those rule changes. College, again, you're wide open, you're spread. It has made scouting long snappers a little more difficult. There are less NFL ready, pocket, protect, snap and protect long snappers. Again, the way those guys operate, running down the field, again, you're going to look for a lot of the same traits. The spot where the game has really changed is that kickoff and kickoff return.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe the NFL numbers, they didn't have any concussions and a major decrease in injuries on that kickoff and kickoff return unit this last year. But, man, it doesn't look like kickoff and kickoff return. It is completely different. And, again, there's you get Neil, who hates it because he's an old head that just hates anything changing in football. I don't particularly like it. Again, it's just like anything. There's still an extremely small percentage of kickoff returns being brought back. With all the rule changes, with what has changed in the NFL, where do you see special teams going? Because it seems like the one easy spot to pick on, to change, adjust, tweak. Does it make it to the college level? Do they try to hem you guys in at
Yeah.
all? Is it only going to stay in the NFL? Talk to me about kind of where you see special teams going.
Yeah, it's purely speculation. I have no idea. But you know what? I would think, a lot of the things that you see in the NFL, they make their way to college, especially when it comes to matters of safety. And, if the data is so strongly suggests, then I think it's only a matter of time. That's just speculation and purely my opinion. But the NCAA is definitely concerned about safety, and that play has been successful in that aspect. Even with the NFL, though, I think there's still going to be a lot of things that they're working through. I don't think that play has really been solved yet. A lot of teams are still just taking touchbacks because of the average starting field position. It's hard to cover, from what I've seen. I'm not an expert on it, but I don't think it'll be this year for us. It's something I'm just watching. And when it does make its way here, if it does, I'm going to have to really dive into because I don't know a ton about it. But I would not be surprised one bit if that play. I like our play in college. I love our play in college. Just because I think of the different returns you can do. I think when it's the NFL play, it seems a little bit more restricted to me, just because they're right in front of each other, and they're so close with us that we can do a lot of stuff. But I'm all for safety, and so if it's going to keep the play in the game, I think we have to do that. And there are guys a lot smarter than me that are working on that play. And so, whatever I think the outcome is, I think it's going to be for the better. And, the fact that it has been successful in reducing injuries is a great thing. And as long as that play is in the game to me, I think it's awesome. I'm all in favor. As long as we have the play, then let's do it. Whatever way we can do that makes the most sense. But there are guys a lot smarter than me that are working on that. So I just take whatever's dealt.
You say guys a lot smarter than you. You've got a finance master's. You've got a degree from
Exactly.
Case. You've got all this. I don't know. You're a pretty smart guy, Tyler. So definitely the humility that has got him to where he is. Tyler, I didn't prepare you for this question. There's a pretty well-known NFL head coach that's got a special teams background. Less common in college because, again, it seems like these guys move around, move up so fast. You're cutting your teeth, you're growing, and continuing to grow as a special teams coordinator. Do you have eyes? Do you have thoughts like, man, I would love to be the head guy that's pulling the strings for this entire team someday? Is that something you'd like to think about?
Yeah, actually, no, not at all. This is my dream job, and the reason is because I deal with football, and Coach Kelly is very close to me. I see all the other things that he's being pulled and drawn to. And obviously, I've been around a lot of good head coaches, and I see what they have to deal with. And there's a reason they get paid the big bucks, because they have to deal with so many problems. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm just a football coach, and so I love doing that. And so I want to just do special teams my entire career. And I'm so happy doing this because I get to do what I love, and that's actual football stuff instead of dealing with money issues, yada yada yada. And so I love it.
Yeah, I mean that's
you're ready for your press conferences, Tyler. That was a very politically correct answer.
Fantastic. What your former boss Cliff Kingsbury again is a fantastic example of that, of somebody that again, the more was put on his plate, the arguably less success he had, and man, he's found a good spot there in Washington with a really good team, really good roster. Right. Obviously, you're recruiting, you're getting out to camps. Do you have a schedule? You'll get into spring ball here soon, of where people can find you, social media links, camps you're going to be at. Where can people go to find more about you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my Twitter is @Coach SCHOV, and then on there you'll see that the FAU football page, we have our spring practice schedule. That's open to NFL scouts and high school coaches. So those guys can come, especially for high school coaches. We're going to have a coaches clinic in April. That's going to be awesome. We're going to have food and drinks and all that stuff. It'll be fun. Get to hear from all of our coaches. So I think that'd be great. So we've got our spring ball stuff coming up. And then for high school players, we have our camp, and it'll be June 1st this summer. And so we'll also be at some other camps. That's our specialist camp. We have a couple other ones after that. But the main thing for the high school coaches and for our NFL guys is our spring practice. We're just coming up, we're on spring break this week, and then hitting the ground running next week with spring practice.
Awesome. Well, again, make sure you go give him a follow, check him out. Again, going to be an exciting season for you guys. Again, just another year to build, another year to showcase everything. It's been a lot of fun. Good to catch up. Best of luck with everything. Tyler, thanks for being on.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file, folder, storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.